Jack, do you want to know what I did last week?
What?
I'm proud to say I went to the Agricultural Economic Society meeting.
That reminds me of a joke.
Go on then.
How many economists does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know. How many?
Anywhere between 1 and 20, depending on how many are sat on the fence.
I think there's more people laughing at that than there was my barbecue story from the week before.
Yeah, it might be laughing with us this week.
Hello and welcome to Agonomics with David and Jack.
Yes, thank you for taking the time to listen. We hope you won't leave disappointed.
I'm David Udall.
I'm Jack Watts, and in this podcast, we look at the world of agriculture and economics.
Hence the name, Agonomics.
In each episode, we shine a light on the analysis work that we and the rest of the AHDB team do for our levy payers.
This week, it's all about the top performers.
A classic piece of work that helps us all to understand what the top farms are doing differently to earn more income.
Hopefully, we can arm you with some valuable information and inspiration.
In fact, we've drafted in extra help to ensure that's the case.
Please follow or subscribe to this podcast to make sure you don't miss an episode.
New shows drop every Wednesday at midday, and please get in touch.
Comment on any of AHDB's social channels.
Or email us agonomics@ahdb.org.uk. It's great to see that we've continued to get some great feedback. So James Webster from the Anderson Centre, and we all know he's not a deep fake, emailed to say, just wanted to drop you a quick email to say how much I've enjoyed the first 3 episodes of the new podcast. Very light-hearted and informative.
And we've had Tony Goodger back in contact again from the Association of Independent Meat Suppliers. And he's saying that AIMS represents levy-paying abattoirs. So it would be good to have one or more agonomics episodes on the abattoir sector, which would be very interesting. And also, how about one on livestock markets? And that's definitely an area we should look at. We've kind of mentioned livestock markets, but we could do some more on them. And he also says when he took economics at school eons ago, don't be that hard on yourself, Tony. The teacher's first name was Jeremy, so we always called it Jeremynomics. Now I'm thinking, Jack, do we aim for our own agricultural economic name like that? We need to have something like, we need to be the Adam Smith of agricultural economics, don't we? I think with this podcast, that's where we need to aim for.
The chair of HDB, Nicholas Sapphire, emailed to say, well done, and something about Muppets.
Thank you, Nicholas. Jack, if you had to be a Muppet, which Muppet would you be?
Kermit the Frog.
I would go Animal.
Well, Bert and Ernie the Muppet. No, what Muppets? Where they were Sesame Street, weren't they?
Sesame Street,
yeah.
And as ever, we've both been given a mystery word or phrase that has no right to be in a podcast about agriculture or economics to slip in somewhere. It may have already happened. So see if you can spot them. After 3 episodes, I think it's 1-1 in terms of us correctly spotting them. Or if you're a glass half full kind of person, 2-2 in terms of us expertly hiding the words from one another. Please let us know if you ever guess any of them at agonomics@ahdb.org.uk. So shall we go straight into the meat of the subject then, Jack? I'm now going to make many meat references to try and get my veggie barbecue dilemma back on track. And this week, we've got Sarah Baker, head of economic analysis, with us to talk about characteristics of top-performing farms. And this is an interesting thing because it sounds pretty obvious, but actually there's kind of a huge amount to it, and there's a load of stuff that goes into this work, and we've released a few pieces of work recently looking at individual sectors and the characteristics that drive performance in those sectors. So Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and kind of give a bit of an overview as to what that work is?
Yes, yeah, sure. So thanks for the intro. As David said, I'm head of economic analysis here. And as Jack said in the intro, the top performance really is a classic piece of work. It's a great example of what AHDB does best. It's that objective, smart analysis of robust data, produced in collaboration, straightforward, easy to communicate, and it resonates with our levy payers. So I'm biased, but it is my favourite piece of work.
So this isn't the first piece of work we've done on this, is this, Sarah? Because this is actually a bit of a revisit of a piece of work that kind of stemmed out of that period in history that we know as the Brexit era, I suppose.
The B word, yes, you're quite right. We worked with Graham Redmond and Steve Langton and the Anderson Centre to really sort of start exploring the fact that our Brexit analysis has shown that however harsh a scenario that farmers would face post-Brexit, the top 25% of performers would remain profitable under any of those scenarios. So our quest, if you like, was to find out what are those top 25% doing differently, and can other farmers emulate that?
Sarah, how do we sort of get over the issue, of course, that farms, even within the same sector, are operating at different scales? Doesn't that have an influence over performance?
Jack, you're right. It's clear that we have economies of scale in our industry, and so larger farms will tend to make larger profits. So what we did with the data, which came from the Farm Business Survey, is we matched farms for obviously for sector, but also for size, for geography, for topography, and location, and that sort of thing. So it took out all the things that are beyond the farmer's control, all the things that they can't change about their business. And then we looked at the significantly different factors between the top 25% and the bottom 50%, according to Farm Business Survey, Farm Business Income. So you could really sort of drill down and find out what that top 25% were doing differently. And it was hugely empowering because it meant that all those factors that we identified were within farmers' control.
One thing that I think we should flag is that this work is really reliant on a really key bit of infrastructure in agricultural economics. That's the Farm Business Survey, a long-standing piece of infrastructure that's actually really important and a really sort of deep source of data about this industry.
Right. Shall we talk about some of the numbers? Because that's kind of like the ham in the sandwich. Another pun there.
Yeah.
To try and get my veggie barbecue back. So what we're talking about here is the difference between the top 25% of the sector and then the bottom 50% in each sector. So we're talking about farm incomes here. So let's talk about beef and sheep first. That this evidence shows there's almost £50,000 difference between the mean of the top performers of their farm income of around 66,000 compared to the mean of the bottom performers, that bottom 50% of around 16,800. That's a big range. But when you start looking at the other sectors, it gets even bigger. That from a cereals and oilseeds perspective, there's £104,000 difference between that top 25% and bottom 50%, and then dairy even larger again, 126,500 between that top 25 and bottom 50%. So these are pretty significant financial figures that we're talking about here as well, Sarah.
It's not small change, is it? That is hugely significant. And don't forget, those differences are on the same size unit, operating under pretty much the same geographical conditions and so on. And those things that the top 25% are doing consistently differently from the bottom 50% can make that amount of financial difference to your bottom line. It is hugely powerful piece of work.
There's so many facets that go into this, isn't there? This isn't just like there's a one-size-fits-all strategy. There's a huge range of factors that drive the influence and drive the impact on these farm businesses. These top characteristics are kind of very clearly laid out as part of this work, aren't they? To sort of show where those high-performing farmers are focusing more of their time and effort and energy. And that's one of those, isn't it? Actually being able to manage time better and being able to manage structure better. You know, this is bigger than just a matter of a slight improvements in genetics or using a different wheat variety. This is more focused on the business element of farming.
Yeah, very much so. So last time we had I think 7 characteristics, and this time we wanted to really draw out the differences that have happened. Now we're halfway through the transition period. And what we found are some of the themes were similar. So that relentless focus on business costs, you know, you've got to be on top of your business costs. You've got to set goals and budgets and so on. But the things that jumped out at me this time, a couple of interesting changes. First of all, the levels of contracting. Now, we spoke last time about not building too many overheads into your business, because once they're built into your business, they're very hard to take back out. And the levels of over mechanization, if you like, in our industry, and the amount of time machinery spent in the shed not being worked. This time we saw a marked increase in top performers and their use of contracting. So obviously they've had a good look at that, and they thought it's not worth my time investing in that piece of machinery. I'm going to allow somebody else to take the risk they can maintain that. They can pay for the servicing and repairs and everything, and I'm just going to get the contractor in as and when I need them. So that was a really interesting change. The other thing was the participation in agri-environment schemes. Now, historically, these agri-environment schemes, without getting too economic-y about it, because of the opportunity cost of taking land out of production, if you like, or altering your rotations, it's been most attractive to lower performing farms, because they have less to give up, if you like, if they're going to use their land for agri-environmental schemes. But what we found with the reduction of BPS and the introduction of SFI and a much broader range of activities and actions that farmers can take in these schemes is that we've got a much more even spread. The top 25% are now actively participating in these schemes, which is encouraging. And it looks as if their attitude is, if I'm already doing this and it fits with my business objectives and it fits with my business rotation and it's practical on the farm, I might as well be being paid for it. So yeah, we've seen that top 25% entering these agri-environmental schemes in larger numbers.
So just to help us understand a little bit more, what years did the data come from for this analysis?
So we took an average because we wanted to sort of smooth out the annual volatility. So we took 2017 to 2018 farm business survey data up to 2021-22.
Okay, so that is then gives us an idea that this was kind of in the early stages of SFI coming through. So what will be interesting is to see in another few years is what role is SFI playing in a high performing or a low performing business. And I think that's going to be quite telling, and yeah, it's going to be influenced by the other factors. So I think at this moment we will take a break for the latest market update.
If you're in the market for another podcast to subscribe to, then look no further than our Manager's Special, AHDB's Food and Farming podcast. Recent episodes include a consumer insight offering on red meat labels and supermarket aisles, as well as a dairy special about our work with retailers to promote milk. If you're after herbs, or rather herbal lays, our shelves are stacked with sage advice on how to introduce lucerne and clover into your fields. In fact, we cater for all tastes, so you'll find sections dedicated to all sectors: pork, cereals and oilseeds, dairy, and beef and lamb. And don't forget our middle aisle, where you can often pick up a bargain episode you didn't know you needed to listen to. Search Food and Farming wherever you get your podcasts. AHDB thanks you for your custom.
Hi, I'm Olivia Bonser, Senior Analyst at HDB, with a look at grain and oilseed markets for the week commencing the 6th of January. Despite some support in wheat markets over the Christmas period, prices have been under pressure in the new year from a strengthening US dollar, technical selling and sluggish global demand. However, Russian wheat crop conditions remain in focus, with warmer than usual temperatures and excess moisture in key growing regions. Persistent hot and dry weather in Argentina is also raising concern over the country's maize crop, which is now in its critical development stage. For rapeseed, new crop prices are supported, with doubts over prospects for global rapeseed production in 2025, though forecasts of heavy soybean supplies from South America limit any major price increases. Over the next few weeks, weather in major exporting countries such as South America and Russia will be key in driving prices. The USDA will also release updated global supply and demand estimates at the end of this week. To stay up to date with the latest data and analysis across arable, red meat, and dairy markets, head to hdb.org.uk and click on Markets and Prices.
Welcome back to Agonomics with David and Jack. This week we are looking at the characteristics of top performing farms. With us is Sarah Baker, Head of Economic Analysis. Before we were starting to talk about the factors that were sort of influencing performance. Sarah, do you want to just sort of carry on and sort of take us through what some of the other headline factors we're thinking about?
Yes, yeah, I think things that have come up this time have been levels of debt with interest rates increasing. That's become an important aspect of top performers, and obviously the top performers have lower levels of debt. The agricultural diversity, we spoke quite a lot about diversification last time, and said be careful with non-agricultural diversification because it can draw valuable management time away from your core business. It's something that you probably need to do once your business is in the top 25%, rather than trying to diversify your way out of trouble. But agricultural diversity does seem to be a significant factor in that it spreads the risk. It spreads the risk at these increasingly volatile times that we operate in, both with the weather, with geopolitical factors, with markets, with prices, and so on, that volatility increasing in magnitude and frequency, having that diversification in the types of activities that you are undertaking within the agricultural part of your business gives you that certain level of resilience. But the key thing for me is that attitude to change. And it's a bit like me knowing that I should go to the gym 3 times a week and I should eat 3 portions of fruit and veg a day and everything. Sometimes I need the evidence put in front of me about what the benefits of doing those things are in order to sort of keep me on the straight and narrow, if you like. And this piece of work is really intended as sort of a reference guide for those farmers who really do want to improve their performance, improve their financial performance, which we understand is not a goal for all farmers. But for those that do, there is a clear evidence base, a clear pathway that if you do these things consistently, your financial performance will improve.
So perhaps David's right then. Perhaps we should be having more vegetables on the barbecue.
Well, you wouldn't be getting those micronutrients then, though, would you? So you've got to have your red meat in there as well.
Absolutely.
Right, here's a question then. So talking about that, not veggie barbecues, talking about attitude to change, and does this actually slightly kind of bring in other areas of evidence that we've seen recently? So it was a few weeks ago, maybe even months ago now, that the NFU released their latest confidence survey, which was actually showing that farmer confidence levels, especially over a longer term period, is at a pretty historic low. And we know that year on year we see pretty big swings in farm incomes because of the commodity price cycles. Farm business incomes have that great bounce back ability year on year. It does change quite considerably. But how do you think that then marries up in terms of these key factors affecting our businesses versus that lack of confidence? That are farmers in a confident position because of all of this change to actually put anything into practice, and do they have that drive to, because there's a lot of those sort of bigger external factors, those existential factors to a degree, that are yet to be resolved, that are there sort of sitting waiting to impact them as well. So I suppose looking forwards over the next 5 years, if we did this piece of work in 5 years' time, do farmers currently have the confidence to enact these changes to actually have a positive impact on their farm business?
That's a really, really good question, David. I think we were all concerned when that confidence survey came out. Economists only know one thing. If they tell you they know more than one thing, they're exaggerating or lying. And that one thing is that confidence underpins investment, and investment drives income. Therefore, with that lack of confidence in the industry, where is the drive going to come from? I hope that this piece of work significantly impacts farmers' attitudes by empowering them, as I said in the introduction, in putting the ball back in their court, because it's easy to look at world events at the moment and think you are completely powerless. There is so little that you can do to influence either government policy or geopolitics or trade wars or climate change. And therefore, I'm going to hunker down and do what I've always done and do it exactly the same. But actually, this piece of work gives farmers a roadmap to sort of take the ball back into their court and to enable them to make those informed business decisions and to really sort of drive their businesses going forward. So I'm hoping that farmers will read this with an open mind. That attitude to change doesn't mean that you've got to be a roaring success. It means that ability to take risks, to look at failure as a learning opportunity, and to pick yourself up and try more things. So that positive attitude that we know that farmers have, because they have to have it. They're incredibly resilient bunch of people because of the nature of the job. But to get some of that back, to give some of their confidence back for the future, that they can survive regardless of what the outside world is throwing at them.
I think the really important word there, and not a mystery word, is long-termism, and being confident to take the long-term view. And we're used to that short-term confidence being volatile because of weather and prices. But I think what's quite challenging to see is that medium-term confidence. So confidence for the next 3 years has gradually been eroded. And that's quite dangerous, I think, because, as you say, it undermines that ability to be confident to invest. I dare say there's a lot of variation around medium-term confidence depending on your circumstances. I think linking back into the diversity thing, I think there's two really important points on there. Yeah, agricultural diversity, I think, is important because of some of the basic biology of farming. So mixed farming, you've got more of a resilient system. The old adage of corn up, horn down. So you've got the ability to spread the risk over there. But I would say that actually diversification probably gets a bad hearing sometimes in agriculture, as long as you know how to use diversification for the business. So in my mind, absolute no is that long-term profitability, any enterprise has to be delivering, medium to long-term profitability, absolutely key. So you can't be subsidizing long-term one with another. The key to diversification, the success of diversification, is that it actually enables a more resilience and stability in the cash flow, because we know one thing can really damage a business, particularly in agriculture, is those cash flow fluctuations. So if you've got the ability to have multiple sources of cash flow from enterprises that are long-term profitable, then I think that's really, really key. And yeah, the point on management time, absolutely right. And I'm going to make a prediction.
Go on then.
So we know this work came up to 2022, and that was before we saw a lot of the big inflation in inputs and everything else coming forward. So I think in the next iteration, one of the key factors will be resource use efficiency. How efficiently is a farmer turning crop nutrients into wheat yield and feed into milk or anything like that? Because I think look at how big those costs have been and the buying strategies that sit behind them.
You're quite right, Jack. The way that we measure performance is totally in efficiency, the ability to turn inputs into outputs, to get that real clear measure of performance. And farmers' ability to do that in these volatile times that you've just described over the last sort of couple of years will be pivotal in determining performance. So yeah, very keen to revisit this in the next 3 or 4 years.
Sarah, thank you so much for all the insight there. I think it's one of those things where we've covered a lot of different topics on this podcast so far, and this is probably one of those much bigger picture things rather than a sort of deep dive into a particular sector, but one of those crucial things of looking at the impact of all of the factors on a farm business. So thank you, Sarah. But before you go, we have to ask you, did you notice or guess at either of our secret words for this week?
I didn't, no. God, well hidden.
I'm pretty sure that Martin, our producer, noticed mine. Well, A, because he knew what it was, but B, because he noticed that I started to smirk when I gave it, so he started to smirk as well. Jack, did you get it?
I didn't. No, I'm rubbish at spotting this.
I didn't get yours as well. I was rubbish as well. Complete
Seamless
loss.
Delivery.
I was impersonating the great Iain Dowie, Crystal Palace football player and football manager, with his own phrase that he coined of bounce back ability.
Oh, what a great word.
Like it.
Great word. Bounce back ability.
It.
Mine came right at the beginning. Deep fake.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Didn't even notice.
I didn't hear deep fake. No. Well hidden.
Hey, that's a question. That's a really good question though, Jack. At what point with this can we just put this all into AI and some AI bot will create our voices for us and we just have to sit back and let it happen? Maybe that's already happened and we're not real.
Uh-oh.